Okay, so the other lesson that we're going to do today is adding and subtracting rational numbers, so lesson 1.6. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to show me how to add and subtract rational numbers. So a little bit of success criteria here. Make this screen a little bit bigger. We want to make sure when we're adding and subtracting fractions, the first thing that you need to find is a common denominator. When we were multiplying and dividing fractions, it didn't matter. We didn't need one. But when we add and subtract, you always need a common denominator. So that's a number that's going to be able to go, both denominators are going to be able to go into. Once we have our common denominator, then we can add and subtract the numerators only. We never subtract denominators. The denominator just carries over, it doesn't change. And then once we've subtracted or added our numerators, we can reduce our answer to lowest terms for our final answer. And if it's an improper fraction, that's fine, just leave it like that. Okay, so we're going to try some examples here, and they'll get progressively more difficult as we go. Okay, so for example A, okay, so we're going to try just a really simple one, 1/3 plus 1/2. Okay, so when we're doing this one, we want to make sure, again, we need a common denominator. So we can draw just one line, and then we want to think of a number that both of these denominators can go into. So 3 and 2, the easiest number that we can think of is probably 6, right? Both numbers go into 6. So 6 becomes our common denominator. And then we're going to do to the top what we did to the bottom to get that denominator. So in this case for 3, well, we needed to multiply 3 by 2. So that means we want to do the same to the top. So 2 times 1 is 2. Keep our adding sign, and then look at the second fraction. Well, for this one, we multiplied the denominator by 3 to get 6. So we're going to do the same thing to the top. So 1 times 3 is 3. Okay. Then we want to add up our numerators. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and we're going to keep our denominator. And then we're going to check to see if we need to reduce, which in this case we don't. This question's done. So for part B, we'll try 3 over 5 minus 3 over 10. So again, you can draw one line, and then we need to figure out a common denominator. So this one's a pretty easy one. I would just use 10 because 5 goes into 10 and 10 goes into 10. So write your denominator on the bottom, and then think of what you did to that first denominator to change it. So we had to do 2 times 5. So again, you're doing the same thing to the top. So 2 times 3 is 6. And for the second fraction here, we didn't have to change anything, right? The denominator was already 10, so we just get to keep the same numerator. We don't have to change anything. So then we subtract our numerators, right? 6 minus 3 is just 3 over 10, and that one's already in lowest terms. Okay, so for C, let's try, we're going to add in some negative numbers, so negative 2 over 5 plus negative 5 over 7. Okay, so again, we still just draw a line, and let's think of our denominator. So we've got a 5 and a 7. The easiest one would be to multiply them together, and that would give us 35. So 5, to get to 35, we had to multiply by 7. So we're going to do the same thing to the top. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. And then for our other fraction, we had to do 7 times 5. So again, on the top, 5 times 5, but it's a negative 5. So this is going to be, well, a plus and a minus gives us a minus. So it's just going to be minus 25. And then again, add or subtract on the top. Well, we're going to subtract, so negative 14 minus 25, and that gives us negative 39 over 35. We can't reduce any further, and it is an improper fraction, but that's fine. Just leave it like that. Okay. So moving on, we're going to try part D. So we've got negative 7 over 3 plus negative 5 over 8. So again, draw a line for your denominator. We've got 3 and 8, so the smallest common denominator would be 24. So to get to 24, we did 3 times 8. So again, what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 8 times negative 7 is negative 56. And then on the second fraction, 8 times 3 was 24. And then the top, so negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. Well, that negative is going to kind of beat out the positive, so we're just going to say minus 15. So negative 56 minus 15 is negative 71, and over 24, leave the denominator the same. Again, this one, it's improper, but we can't reduce any further, so we're just going to leave it. Okay, so if we try another one, we've got 2/3 minus 2/6. Oh, I guess we don't really need brackets around this first one. Okay, so again, this one's a pretty simple one. Common denominator is an easy one. It's 6 and 3, so we can just make it 6. Whoops, what is happening here? There we go. Equals. Okay. So on our first fraction, we needed to multiply by 2 to get to 6. So 2 times 2 is 4. And the second one, we didn't have to do anything. The denominator was already 6, so just keep the numerator the same. Well, 4 minus 2 is 2 over 6. This one we can reduce. So in this case, we could divide top and bottom by 2, and that would give us 1/3. Alright, so we'll try negative 2/3 plus 6. Okay, so this works too. We can have whole numbers when we're adding and subtracting fractions. We're going to treat them just like anything else. So again, we have to have a common denominator. One thing to remember, this 6 here is technically a 6 over 1. That might help you remember that it should also have a denominator. When you have a whole number, the easiest denominator to make is just the fraction that you're using. So in this case, let's use 3. So we can leave that first one, but now we have to say, well, what did we do? So to our second. So we had 1 on the bottom, we had to multiply it by 3, which means we also have to multiply the top number by 3. So 6 times 3 is 18. So now we can just add up our tops. So negative 2 plus 18 is 16, and then leave your denominator over 3. And that's in the simplest form here. Okay, so we'll try a couple more, some more challenging ones. So G, let's try negative 3 over 10 plus 1 1/4. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is change this mixed number to an improper fraction. So I'm going to just leave my first one. It doesn't need to be in brackets, so I'm going to get rid of them. And then change this mixed number. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 4. Now I can get a common denominator. So you can just multiply the bottoms together and get 40, but there's a smaller number. Both of these can go into 20, so I'm going to use 20 as my common denominator. So for my first one, 10 to get to 20, we had to multiply by 2. Okay, so the top 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And the second number, well, 4 to get to 20, we had to multiply by 5. So in the top, 5 times 5 is 25. So in this case, now we can just add them up. Negative 6 plus 25 is 19 over 20. And that one would be done. H, we can do 4 5/6 minus 1 1/2. So again, we're going to have to change these mixed numbers to improper. So we've got what? 4 times 6 is 24, plus 5 is 29 over 6, and 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3 over 2. Okay, this one's an easy common denominator. We can just keep it at 6. The first number we don't have to change anything because we already have the same number. The second one here, we multiplied each by 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. 20 minus 9 is 20 over 6. This one we will have to reduce. They're both even numbers. So we can divide both by 2, and we get 10 over 3. Okay, and last example here, we've got negative 4/5 plus 8 minus negative 3 and 1/2. So again, I would start by getting rid of my mixed numbers. So I'm just going to get rid of the brackets on that one. Plus 8, if you want to put it over 1 to remind yourself, you can. You could simplify your signs here, that becomes a plus, right? And then 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7 over 2. Alright, so now we have 3 different numbers that we need to get a common denominator for. So we've got 5, 1, and 2. So easiest number that comes to mind for all those is 10. So then we're going to take a look at each one and figure out what the numerator is going to be. So from 5 to get to 10, we multiplied by 2. So same thing for top. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. For this 8 one, we had to multiply both by 10. So we're going to get a big number here. So 8 times 10 is 80. And the last one here, 2 to get to 10, we multiply by 5. 7 times 5 is 35. So then again, we just need to add, subtract the tops. So we've got negative 8 plus 80 plus 35. So we're going to end up with 107 over 10, and we can't reduce that any farther. So this is the end of our adding and subtracting lesson. Make sure you give your homework a try.